really summed up kind of my role pretty elegantly. Like you said, I have taken over my father's family business, titled this presentation Mideast by Midwest, because I think that does kind of sum it up. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my transition into our family business. I'm assuming most of you folks are kind of curious about some of the structures of transition. It's going to be a very honest and humble presentation. This was not a clean and easy process, which I think you'll hear a lot more about. And so just kind of excited to share a little bit. And it's very much my personal family story. I suspect that many of you have lots of questions, and I'll do my very best to answer them. And hopefully some of what I share will be relevant and relatable. And like I said, happy to answer any other questions. So this is me and my dad about around the time that I took over in, I think 2014 was the first official year I took over our family business. Like I said, it is kind of a real treasure trove of all sorts of different ingredients. My family's Lebanese, and I'll explain a little bit about how my father landed in Cincinnati, Ohio, of all places. But we really carry a wide variety of product. So we have inventory from, I think, 36 different countries all around the globe. Our customers are Ethiopian, they are Croatian. We've got customers from India. It really runs the gamut. And then we also have just a ton of people who have traveled extensively and have tried food from around the world. We've got a really small footprint. It's a retail store with about 700 square feet of retail space, but we pack a ton into a small space. So it really is a fun little shop. If you're ever in Findlay Market in Cincinnati, I highly recommend a visit. It's really just an amazing place. So, like I said, my dad came from the, very uncomplicated region of Lebanon. You can see it here nestled between Israel, Syria, Iraq. It's a challenging place to grow up. This is a picture of, let's see, this is a picture of Beirut in 1975. And this is a picture in 1976. Just a really, really difficult and challenging region. And I am going to just apologize. I think in our kerfluffle, I pulled up the wrong presentation. So hold on just 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. This is why we do checks. So I know I deleted that slide.
All right, so while Kate does that, I'm going to do a few shout outs for those who put their information in the chat. So we have JC Knox with Vintage Solutions. She says, my husband and I digitize older media such as home movies and photos. Oh, that's super cool. So we can be reached at www.myvintagesolutions.com. Very unique business. Then we have Kara Michelle Pearson with Lilac and Indigo. Thank you for joining us, Kara. You're always on our session, so I appreciate that. So Kara, and I think Kara actually posted to the host and panelist. So I'm going to copy and paste her post and put it in the main group for her. But Kara said, I provide relaxation experience that combine mindfulness with creativity for stressed out groups and individuals. I can be reached at www.lilacandindigo.com. No problem, Kara. I got you. All right. Ready, Kate?
Yes.
Yeah. And y'all keep posting in the chat. Of course, listen to Kate. Keep posting in the chat. We love to hear what you all do.
Yeah, I'm actually very curious about sort of where everyone's at and what folks are interested in. So please, yeah, please give me your updates. Apologies for that. Yeah, so kind of like I was saying, Lebanon in the 70s had just a whole series of tumults and turmoils. It's not unlike sort of what we're seeing now in the Middle East. It's a complicated place with a complicated history. There, by the grace of this woman, who is my grandma, my father got the heck out of there. He was about 20 when he left Beirut. And he joined kind of a service organization that was connected to the Peace Corps. So he was a hospital administrator. He ran the dietary department in a hospital in Oman, in the Gulf state. And that's how we met my mom. My mom was from Cincinnati, Ohio, and had a job as a nurse in the Peace Corps. I am convinced that there is a whole network of Peace Corps babies that exist out of these relationships of folks who kind of met and fell in love in the Peace Corps. It's a neat program, and it's something that I've sort of stayed interested in. And she was from Cincinnati, and so that's how he landed here. There are tons of Lebanese and other Arab Americans scattered around the entire globe. But as you can see, many, many landed in North America. We actually happen to be very close to the largest hub of Arab Americans in the United States, near Michigan. So we're about 3 hours away from Michigan. And that's actually where my dad got his start. He had a cousin that worked in kind of the specialty food. Nut and coffee roasting. So this was his first package of fancy cashews roasted on site. Still a cornerstone of our business. And I love finding these little artifacts in our business. Just sort of a wonderful reminder of the legacy of family. And Khalid was the name of his cousin. And it's just a kind of a neat thing. You can see the address of our store in Cincinnati at the very, very bottom. And that's how my dad got his start. So kind of stayed a specialty food, specializing in spices, nuts, coffees. It really is a unique place. And when I really think about kind of the ingenuity that he brought to his business, there's really nothing else like it. And consider myself a grocery store expert. I visit a lot of them because I love the business. And it's just such a unique and special place. He built the business on the cornerstone of relationships, and we remain with that sort of ethic today. His customers would come back. We've got folks who have been shopping with us for years, and I mean like 40 years. Friends, we've just built connections, and that was one of his strengths. This was at an era where specialty ingredients like things like hummus and pita bread, they were still pretty unusual. This was still kind of a time when these ingredients were hard to find and not very trendy. I have memories of bringing like hummus sandwiches to school and my friends saying like, "What are you eating? Like, what is that stuff?" So I like to think that my dad kind of helped expose the greater Cincinnati area and the region to the wonders of Lebanese cuisine. So fast forward many, many years to me. I'm kind of like you said, Isa, I kind of took on the mantle of peace and justice work. This is me with some colleagues at the United Nations. I worked for a number of different peace organizations. I think it's part inspired by just the challenges that I saw my dad face and his family face through decades of war and conflict. Really dedicated myself to thinking through like how can I be a force for good in the world, and kind of had this whole track as like a nonprofit career person that I did for a number of years, working around those kinds of issues, but still became very dedicated to the food. Just loved cooking, loved eating. I loved sharing. That's my aunt, my grandma, all of these folks were really, really instrumental in just exposing me to the wonders of Middle Eastern and Lebanese cuisine. So these are just some of my favorite. I had to put some food shots in there because it's such a culture that is so rich with food history and connectivity. Food is just the backbone of families, and so that sort of like undergirds every single thing that we do as a family, and it's just a huge part of it. And I love being part of the shared table experience, and it's sort of what I hope to bring to my customers as well. So another stark juxtaposition. This is my dad, I think in 2012, and this is my dad in 2013. He was struck with a really serious form of brain cancer. It was inoperable. We were not sure if he was going to make it. I was living in Philadelphia at the time, a city that I loved. I had a job there. And with this diagnosis, I came back home to run the family business. We didn't know what was going to happen. I like putting this slide in because this is my dad just a few short years later. Testament to the Mediterranean diet, people. Eat your vegetables and eat your hummus because it really, that and the grace of UC Medical Center and a lot of chemotherapy. He's now, I think, almost 15 years survived a brain tumor, which is almost unheard of. He had a remarkably positive attitude throughout, and it was really tough. It was really, really hard. He's also almost deaf, but we say, hey man, better deaf than dead, you know, like he really persevered and beat his cancer diagnosis and has remained, knock on wood, cancer free for a number of years. But it is what kind of prompted me to come back to the business. I was working in nonprofits and, you know, I was always, you know, into the food and I loved cooking and I kind of considered starting my own business, but I, you know, wasn't sure. It was this diagnosis that kind of brought me back into the family, back to Cincinnati, and just here ready to take care of my family and keep my dad's legacy going. Um, this is usually where my kind of introduction to Dean's presentation ends, and you guys are getting the benefit of the backstory, of which there is much backstory. This was not an easy transition, and I think that is something to kind of remember as we're talking about the transition between family businesses. Um, in many ways, my dad retiring from our family business was the very best case scenario. He's alive. He's here to tell the tale. You know, he's cancer free. He rides his bike everywhere. After he sort of beat his illness, or you know, through the course of his illness, he pretty much decided he was done. It was just, you know, the toll of running a business had taken its toll. It was you know, it's exhausting. You all know, you're all business owners, you know. It's really hard. It's very stressful at times. It can be, he always says, it was the most fun I ever had, and it was a lot of work. So I put this kind of meme picture in because that is pretty much how he left the business. He got out of there so fast. He was just done. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. He did tried his best to kind of teach me some of the systems that he had, but I will say, I had a business mentor tell me, "Look, entrepreneurs get their gifts from God." That he couldn't explain to me how he did it. He just said, "I did it." So I never got a real transition. All of this was sort of mixed up in, you know, him being kind of sick, and so I took over under duress. It was run by primarily employees for more than 2 years. I inherited some serious problems, pest issues, an excess of inventory. My dad was kind of a hoarder of inventory, or either that, or it was that he was the only buyer, and so he was just buying whatever he thought he should buy, whether or not we were out of it, or there was no system to keep track of any of the inventory. The equipment was elderly. It still is. I'm still in the process of sort of upgrading the equipment. We also, you know, we had financial reports that made no sense to me. I could not decipher these for anything. And he was doing okay financially, but his financial reports did not reflect that. And I, you know, I was sort of pouring through these statements like, oh, I don't know what any of this means. And like I said, nothing was systematized. I had to kind of come in spreadsheet girl. Like I like to sort of know what everything is on paper. And that was not how he operated his business at all. He was very intuitive and he built it up from nothing. So he had a kind of, I think, gut sense, whereas I was sort of like, what does any of this mean? And then I had to sort of manage my own self. I was a new business owner. I came from a completely different industry. I took this like sort of spaghetti at the wall approach. I said, let's just try a lot of different things and see what works. And that worked to varying degrees, although I will say it is a very costly way to run your business. I tried everything, wholesale lines. I added a kitchen. We just started a takeout business. I started a nonprofit, like not a nonprofit, but kind of like a side social project. I was trying to be everything to everyone, and I was running myself completely ragged in the process. There was also no way to measure profitability or cash flow. Um, I felt like our sales were really strong and people said they loved what I was doing, they loved the work. But at the end of the day, I didn't have the cash in the bank. And this was a brick and mortar sort of retail store. But I think it applies to any type of business. Cash is king. You've got to have cash flow to keep your business running. And that's where I was running into problems. So I was running up high amounts of credit card debt. really high interest debt, and just finding myself in a heap of trouble. Um, this was a process of like many years that this was going on. So we also had family dynamics to contend with. It's a family business. I have two sisters. Um, they have been involved and interested in the business in varying degrees. I love them both dearly, but we found that we are not great at working together, and sorting out how that was going to work has been difficult and remains sort of a challenge, I think. Um, they are thankfully sort of like they both have sort of stepped back and said, okay, you clearly want to do this. They're kind of my advisory board, whether I want it or not. It's actually great. But they do help, they offer the most honest advice that I could get. So that's sort of nice to have. Although sometimes it's hard to hear. Then there was a lot of untangling my dad's personal finance and what was mine, what was Dean's. My dad very wisely invested in lots of property. You know, we had our childhood home that he still had. He bought the building that the business was in, and all of this was on the business books. So, what is mine? What is Dean's? What is what? We had to do a lot of pulling apart and untangling. And then there was also kind of founder syndrome a bit. What was I responsible for and what was Dean responsible for? Thankfully, like I said, my dad was ready to get out of the business, so we didn't have the problem of him hovering. And because I think that's very common in some family businesses, of the founder sort of hangs out and is monitoring everything very closely and is nitpicking. And thankfully, my dad was pretty ready to let go. Um, and so he did, although again, I have the best sounding board ever, whether I like it or not. And like I said, sales were strong. For the longest time, my only performance metric that I looked at was sales. Not recommended as a business strategy. Sales are not enough. You need cash and you need profitability. But what I did know is that we had a product that was popular and marketable. Something that people wanted. So that is what those sales numbers told me. And so I just kept going and kept going, and I think learned a lot through the process. So then there was sort of a smoothing it out. I had the hummus pun here. We do a lot of smoothing out in our store. We're making a lot of hummus every day, putting it all in a mixer and getting it nice and even and smooth. I was able to get a SBA 7A loan, and I say I bought my dad out. I didn't exactly buy him out. Basically, what I did is I said, okay, I've run up all this debt. I have a mountain of credit card bills. I'm going to get a low interest loan, pay off the debt. And some of that debt was used to sort of figure out mine and my dad's sort of like intertwined financial life, if that makes sense. Basically, he sold me the business for a song, and I was able to then use the funds from the SBA 7A loan to not only pay off that high interest debt, but then to get with a lawyer. And I put a couple, I'm not a lawyer, and I'll add that disclaimer, but these are the documents that we use to transfer interest. It was an LLC membership interest transfer agreement where I basically bought 99% of the business. So, and then we also have an LLC operating agreement. A lawyer drafted those, somebody I trust and I really like. And we kept my dad on as a 1% owner. That was per my wishes. I wanted to do that because it felt important to me to sort of retain the legacy and the institutional memory that my dad has. And there was a sort of practical end too of not wanting to reapply for all the business licenses. Start from scratch. It just felt like that would be prudent. At that 1% ownership, I still file a partnership tax return, but he gets a K1 that is a nominal kind of like nod to like, hey, your name is still in the business and you get X, 1% of the profits basically. So that did not solve the problem though. Finance funding can help, but you still have to be a profitable business. So it's not enough just to have the debt paid off. You've got to have a way to pay for it. So things were tight. I was still kind of running up some debt. I was not operating in the black as of yet. And in a way, COVID really helped. It was such a shock, I think, to the system. Credit to the folks at Findlay Market, which is the kind of public market that we operate in. They really pushed for our businesses to be deemed essential businesses because we are, in effect, a grocery store. And it meant that I had to scale back everything that I was doing and just focus on the grocery part. And in some ways, I think that is what part of what helped me figure out how to run a profitable business. I think it just kind of having that narrow focus, and we scaled our staff way back. I was able to get a couple of the low interest COVID loans. And that really helped. I also found, and I recommend this to every new entrepreneur. It's a series of books, but the one that was the most impactful to me was called The Profit First by Mike McCallowicz. This guy could probably pay me to be his proselytizer, but he doesn't. Um, I find his books to be really, really helpful. And he has a system for entrepreneurs to put profit first. And it transformed the way that I run my business and government business and really, really helped. So I always give that a little mention because it was hard one. I finally was like, I'm sick of this. Like, I'm sick of being broke all the time and struggling so much. Like, I gotta figure something out. So I hit the library, which is my other favorite resource. I call the library probably once a week with questions. And I'm kind of a book nerd, so they always are able to kind of point me to some books that will help. And beyond just the profit first system, I would say that sort of entrepreneurial skill of figuring it out through whatever resources at your disposal kind of, and this is what sort of drew me to ECDI. There's a lot of resources out there, but wading through them, it can be challenging. And so that was one that I sort of tapped that was extremely helpful. So in 4 years, I paid off almost $100,000 in debt with that debt snowball approach. Excuse me, I'm gonna take another sip of water. All right. Had to pay taxes for the first time, and that completely took me by surprise. Operating a business in the black, yes, you do have to pay income taxes. And that was, like, oh, okay, that's a thing. I'll have to learn about that now. And then learning just about sort of how to manage the financial side, paying my quarterly taxes on time, not getting hit with millions of fees, getting all my end of year things in order, how to read a balance sheet and how to read my income statements. All of this became very crucial as, I started to become a profitable business. And that, again, that it doesn't solve everything, but it does help a ton. But there's still a learning curve. But we're entrepreneurs. We figure it out as we go, and that's sort of what I've done. I will also say that I have had an incredible bookkeeper that's kind of helped me figure out some of this, and a CPA. I've now switched CPAs, I think, 4 or 5 times, but finally landed on one who has been able to help me understand some of this and explain it to me in a way that makes sense and that I can manage on the day to day. And then finally, I will just say through all of this, it's been a slog. It's been really, really hard. But family really is the thing that I think has kept me going. They're my harshest critics and my biggest fans. And I think letting love kind of be in the driver's seat has just made it so that this feels like more than a job. Um, my dad still is there by my side, giving me advice, whether I want it or not. And even, when I came to him saying, like, in tears, I'm having all these financial problems and I don't know what to do. I think I expected him to, like, think of me as a failure. I thought of myself as a failure. And he just welcomed me with open arms. And his first reaction was, what can I do to help? Like, how do we fix this? Are you okay? I hate seeing you upset. Let's fix this. It was sort of a beautiful moment, and it has had me just very reflective. As I was making this presentation, I was like, oh, this is really powerful. Like, family really can be your biggest support, and it should be. At the end of the day, they want to see you successful. And so, despite it all, I have a lot of things that kind of helped me along the way, but I would say that was sort of at its core. And I think with that, I'll wrap it up, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ooh, perfect. Thank you, Kate. That was wonderful. And this is really, like Kate said, this is going to be a session for you all to really kind of answer your questions within your family businesses or the businesses that you're looking to learn and kind of try to pull from some of Kate's experience in running Dean. So we had one question that was from Nasser Afanat. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He said, "Hello, Kate," and you actually answered this during the session. He asked, "Why did you move it from an LLC, um, or why didn't you move it from an LLC to an Inc?" And then you had an answer saying, "As to not have to apply for all the business licenses and things again." Did you have anything additional in terms of that decision to keep it as an LLC?
You know, the big driver was our food stamp license. This was actually during the Trump administration, and Trump had we had gotten letters kind of from the USDA sort of implying that they were going to start cracking down on food stamp licensing. And the interest, I guess, the official name is SNAP. It's a USDA program basically, and as a United States, a federal program. And I was really concerned that, so one of the geniuses of my dad's business is that he sort of hits a whole wide range of income levels. So we sell pasta sauce that's $16, but we also sell like spice rubs that you can buy for as little as 60 cents a piece. And our neighborhood is a really mixed income neighborhood, and primarily a low income neighborhood that gets a big tourist draw from like sort of higher incomes. And I, kind of coming from that like justice background, felt really strongly that I wanted to make sure that we retained our food stamp business primarily because it was sort of serving this low income community, and I didn't want to lose that. So that was really the main license that I was very protective of. I think USDA, they sent us all these scary letters and then they never followed up. So it's still kind of up in the air. I thought we were going to have to reapply. And I thought they were going to crack down on, yes, you're supposed to sell a certain number of things, and it worked in like when we applied the first time in 1980, but I wasn't sure if it would work now. So I was like, let's just keep the same license and don't rock that boat. So that was a big
Makes
reason.
sense. And then also had another question. You had mentioned like having CPAs and mentors and different things like that. He was curious if you had received any of that assistance through ECDI.
My introduction to ECDI was actually through the Sprint loan program. And this is a great program, and I've seen it now available a couple of times. And that is a sort of like low interest. I think it's 2%. The loan that I got was a small loan, $20,000, and it was at a 2% interest rate. And it afforded me actually what we used that little loan for was to sort of improve our kitchen. My dad never had a takeout menu, but we had a hood and a roasting machine for some of the other products that we carry. And so I added this takeout menu, but it was really sort of pieced together. And so I knew I wanted to redo our menu, and um, I was able to invest it in some new equipment that made us more efficient. And it was such a low interest rate. It was like a no-brainer. Really, and really easy monthly payment. Again, I always sort of have a word of caution around being over leveraged because I've been over leveraged. No amount of loans in the world, no matter what the interest rate, will solve cash flow problems. Like if you're not investing in your profitability, then you're just going to keep getting deeper and deeper into a hole. But by the time I had gotten the ECDI loan, I kind of figured that out. And so, um, yeah, it was great. It's a great program. And I think you had one for Women's History Month. I'll also likely be tapping ECDI because as we're growing our business, we're going to be opening a new location. So I'll be
Oh,
tapping
very cool.
ECDI for that. Yes.
Well, we will be here waiting.
Nice.
So, but yeah, so I did want to touch on that a bit. So we did have a sprint loan program. I think Kate is referring to the one we did in like 2021 or something like that.
I think so, yeah.
Um, and we do those, and they come in different names. That one was literally called a sprint loan. The one we just did in March was our women's history loan, for women-owned businesses. So we do those. I would say maybe at least once a year or so. So just be on the lookout for those. But for those of you on the call or listening to this recording, I just wanted to be clear that we don't kind of keep those special loan programs, kind of going all the time. So, just keep a look at our website, in our newsletter for when those loan programs come up. Okay, so there were a few other questions here. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you run two businesses, right, Kate? You have like a kind of like a nonprofit that you do.
Um, Now, that is so Stir is sort of a side project, and I would love
Mhm.
to get it designated as a nonprofit, but it's not as
Okay,
of right now. It's
right.
a program that's housed under Dean's, and it is basically what I saw across my counter was all of these people that were connecting over like lines of like class and race and all sorts of different barriers that keep us apart. They were connecting over food. And I thought, could we take that concept and sort of blow it up a little and make it a bigger thing? Just like using food as a tool to get to sort of deeper conversations, and it was amazing. I got a really small grant through a program here in Cincinnati to run a series of cooking classes where we brought people together to just share recipes, share who they are and their story. And we did a series of videos that I can make sure to send to Issa that are really great. We did one on dumplings where we looked at dumplings across different cultures. And we did one on school and sort of cooking for school age kids and getting kids encouraged to cook. Things like that, where we just really tried to bring people together across whatever lines exist, to build social capital and to start to kind of get at harder, deeper conversations. That right now is more prescient than ever with sort of the problems of the Middle East, and have been kind of working to do that with some organizations here. I helped to start the Mina Pastry Collective, and just bringing together different bakers from the Arab community to kind of like show up at events and things and share our kind of cultural products. Um, so as we open our new location, my hope is that we'll be able to do things like kitchen takeovers, like really moving into kind of like challenging areas like the Middle East, where like nobody wants to talk about it because it's got a lot of history and complicated feelings. Like, can we start with food and work our way up to the harder conversations? Our new location is going to feature, it's going to be basically a big table, with the idea that the best place for these conversations to start is around a shared table.
And that sounds amazing. I'm really interested in learning more about that myself. But I asked the question, so it sounds like you have not just yourself, but some other people that help you with Start that you work with, for that project. So what are some of the comparisons that you've seen between running a family business and then having more of a general business like Stir, where it's just kind of you and probably colleagues who have a similar mission?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would even say that like at Dean's at this point, my family is there sort of as advisors, but they're not really involved. And I'm not really in the day to day right now, which is sort of a weird switch for me. I'm not running the counter. I work 1 day a week in the store on Saturdays, and that's because I like to see my old friends. Um, and I love doing it. It's the busiest day. But I have hired two young women, both in their 20s. I have a kitchen manager and a general manager. And at this point, I would say that my greatest gratification comes from supporting them. Um, because I sort of think about where I was at in my 20s and, all the learning I was doing, all the learning how to manage people and deal with, challenges and problems as they come up. And so I now invest a significant amount of my time in sort of supporting their leadership. Again, like young women, one woman is from Mexico, the other woman is just fell in love with the dean's kind of model and cuisine, and just she went to culinary school so she could work for us. That's our kitchen manager. And so, like I said, yeah, I have really found it to be gratifying to kind of support their leadership and give them opportunities that they might have not have otherwise. So we do a lot of travel. We'll go to food shows. I'm trying to kind of score an internship for my kitchen manager to kind of study underneath some like pretty significant Lebanese chefs. So I think that can be sort of as I sort of like move into this new space for me of not being so much in the day to day, supporting younger leadership has been where I've kind of found my groove.
It sounds like, especially as you talk about how you came into, kind of taking over Dean's, and kind of how you've implemented new things into it. There seems to be this intersection between the business and your passions that you've really tried to kind of keep, central to it. Because can you tell us a bit about that and how kind of implementing your passions for like social justice and, bringing people together have really kind of motivated you to keep pushing forward?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is so important, I think, especially in a family business. And my dad is a kind of tried and true, like immigrant entrepreneur, right? Like he's very business minded. It's like money first, sell what sells. He's always like, sell whatever you want, sell phone cards, sell everything. Like I'm like, well, I had to stay committed to my vision and have clarity and security in my own vision, especially in a family business. You have to do that as an entrepreneur anyway, but in a family business, I had all these inputs of like between my dad, my sisters, and then even my colleagues and my friends and my, my immediate family, kind of telling me like, hey, like you've got a vision, stick with it. And I had to kind of like hear input from my dad. He was a little more maybe logistically minded, like all the wooey stuff about community and blah blah blah. He's like, what? I don't get it. Sure. So I think I've always been somebody who's had I'm the type at the beginning of the year to make a vision board and a list of goals. And I have a personal mission statement that I read to myself. Just staying clear to who I am and what I care about has been a huge driver for me. And like, it's amazing. I will occasionally teach cooking classes, and I don't have to try that hard. People always say like, "You're great at this. Your passion really comes through." And it's not like I have to like psych myself up to do it or anything. I just do it and I love it, and people see it. Like I think that if you have a product that you care about, passion comes through and you don't have to work that hard at it. You just sort of
Mhm.
let that lead you. And I find that that seems to be the best way forward.
Yeah, and that kind of speaks to something that it sounds like we talk about a lot. It's like those mission, vision, values of your business, and I love how you talk about having that personal mission statement and then revisiting that, you know, like I have Dean's, I have Stir, but all of these things are related to how me, Kate, want to leave my impact on the world. It's kind of what it sounds like. So, I
That's
really, I
exactly
really
right.
love that. All right, so we had another question that popped up, and we have some time. So I'm actually, if anybody wants to ask a question to Kate directly, just raise your hand and I'll bring you off of, I'll allow you to speak essentially. But the other question we have posted in the chat, it says, I currently hate my job and want to open my own business. What would be your best advice?
Ah, yes. That's a great question. I also hated my job. I had the best job on paper. Like I graduated with a degree and such, and then went on to do the exact thing that I set out to do. And I was so bored. I really hated it. So that is very relatable. Um, what would I advise? Clarity about your mission and purpose, I think would be the first thing. Because it can get hard and you want to make sure that you're, clear on what it is you're doing and why, because that's going to have to carry you through some hard times. I think I'm a researcher. Like, I like to read and sort of gather as much information as I can. Um, so that would be another one is just try to start with a good foundation of knowledge of sort of what it is that you're getting into. If it's a service-based business, like make sure you know who your customers are and make sure you know about sales funnels and pipelines and um, like, even if you have a great idea, that has to be executed well. And that, requires a lot of foundational knowledge. So, that is, I think, a good place to start. Um, and make sure you have even just the most rudimentary financial tools to make sure that you're making money. Because without, without a solid plan for staying in the black, you run into a heap of trouble. It can get really really tricky. And the worst feeling in the world is being up late at night wondering how you're going to pay your bills. Um, that is, you don't want that.
Let's see. And then again, to use that raise your hand function at the bottom of your Zoom menu, whether on your phone or your computer, there's literally a button right there that says raise hand. And then you can click that and I'll be able to see it. And then I'll allow you to talk on the video. So another question I had, because I see we have a few family businesses here. You're also like a second generation family business. So what were some of the things that you kind of seen, not only in that transitional part, but even growing up in that first generation of the family business that were kind of integral to both its success and some of the hardships that some of our first generation family businesses might, want to look out for.
Sure, sure. Um, that's a really good question. The business was hard on our family for sure. Um, I think growing up, it was sort of like, my mom kind of, I think, felt a little bit like she had to be the breadwinner because my dad's income was sort of just unknown. It worked out great in the end, but in the very beginning, there was some times where it was like, it was tricky. Um, so, making sure that you've got some basics covered, like health insurance, um, the stuff that comes from like a regular 9 to 5. Like maybe not leaping in all at once, starting off small so that you're able to sort of retain some of the pension benefits, like things that can be kind of anchoring to a family. Um, if you have that available to you. Like not just diving in right away with no plan for how you're going to, just assuming that it's going to be successful. Because you don't know, it's a risk. That would be one of them. You know, Involving your kids in the business, I think is awesome. I spent a lot of time in my family store, and I have really special memories of decorating pictures for the windows and helping my dad taste test the hummus. Like, it's really how I learned to cook was in the shop, because he didn't really have time to cook at home, but he was making things for us in the store. And so I would be the taste tester. I had to say, like, oh, it needs more lemon, it needs more garlic. We were really involved. And from the time we were little, like I mean little, is so 6 and 7 and 8. Um, I got to see my dad in a really new way. And I think there may be like a reticence maybe to get your kids involved. But it's a special thing. To see your parents and their passion kind of flourish. And I now have a 3-year-old daughter myself. We live above the store as well, and she's very involved in the sense that she's, down in the shop all the time. She sees how hard I work. She loves that I have a store, and intend. I mean, she'll be working for me by the time she's 7. Even if it's as simple as, like grading pictures and things. Um, I hope that she has the same memories of taking naps on the bags of lentils that I do. That's another one. Just involve your kids, let them see how hard you work and let them see what you're passionate about, because those are really core memories for me, and really important to, I think, my own ideas about how I want to run my life.
Oh yeah, I think that's also really important being a father myself. I oftentimes see my wife owns a business. And I oftentimes see where, we're doing things, we're making things, and we're, running the business. And it's like, oh, well, go there and do that so that we can do this. But involving them in that process. I know one group said they had a video editing uh business. So involving them in that process, like you said, not only creates those core memories, but even from a more prudent sense, also starts to develop what that second generation of business owners can look like. Even if they don't take over the business, like in the case it sounds like with your family members, they still know enough from what they learned to be able to help advise the direction and get back to or stay kind of this is kind of like what was essential about Dean's and what people love about it, so if your business starts to ever veer from that point as the owner, you'll still have those people who remember that say, hey, these are kind of some of the things that we loved about it. And this is likely what our customers love about it. So we might want to keep that core thing as a part of it. Um, yeah, so all right, so we've got two raised hands. I seen Nasser Fenes hand go up first. And Nasser, please tell me how to pronounce your last name at least. So I'm gonna allow you to talk. All right. Nasser, you can go ahead.
Hello, you said hello, Kate. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Last name is pronounced Afana, or
Fana,
Afan.
okay.
Uh,
Okay,
trust
gotcha.
me, get
Perfect,
butchered my
perfect.
whole life.
Fana. Okay. I know mine does too. I was like, I can't keep messing up his name. We'll go ahead.
Well, Kate, I enjoyed everything that you said today, and really, you're inspiring me to take a leap. But there's always a fear that I have of taking that leap. Uh, Number one, I know what I want to do. I just don't know how to do it. And that's why one of the questions that Isa was asking you was my question of uh, do I go to ECDI? Do I go to a CPA? Who do you initially go to put all this that I have in my mind on paper and to really get going? Uh, and with that being said, my family's all had businesses, none of them that I want to do. None of them that I want to do, between the small bodegas or corner stores to a gas station to selling food. I don't want to do any of that. I have my own vision and want to do what I want to do. But I'm scared because I don't know. And to back up, they really didn't go to anybody to do anything. They just all worked at maybe Ford or GM and when it came to America and they just put their money together to buy one business and then that one business went to two businesses and three businesses. So I kind of want to I don't know how to start. I'll say that, Kate.
You want to carry on the legacy of entrepreneurship, but put your own stamp on
Yes.
it and do the thing that is interesting to you. That makes so much sense. Yeah. Yeah, and it really is just like, I mean, I think the spirit of family business ownership, it's contagious, right? Like it's cool to see. It's cool to see someone go from an idea and a dime to, something that is lasting and has a legacy. So I really understand that. I will say, striking the balance between your professionals. So folks like a CPA, any resources that ECDI might have. And then also as much as you can understand yourself is really beneficial. I think in the beginning I was like, I don't know about bookkeeping. Somebody else do this. And that got me into a little bit of trouble because I didn't understand it enough for myself. I was getting these quarterly, like, so I have employees, right? Because we have a brick and mortar. I was getting these quarterly, reports that said you got to pay this tax and this tax and this tax. And I'd be like, I don't have the money. I'll pay that later. No, I don't have a letter yet, so don't do that. You don't want to get in trouble with the government. Like I racked up a ton of fines and fees, and it took me years to untangle it. And it was partially just because I was getting these pieces of paper that I said, I don't know, and kind of just thought, I'll let the professionals handle that. You need to understand your business at least to a degree that sort of what you need to do to stay licensed, to stay legal, and to stay sort of above board. That's really important. And I think the more that you understand, the more that you can sort of direct the professionals that you have working for you. Now, don't try to do your own taxes. Hire those professionals that know what they're doing, because that's why they're there. But make sure you have at least a rudimentary understanding. I mean, you're doing the right thing, right? Signing up for the webinars and, just trying to kind of tap SCORE, tap ECDI, these various different programs that exist for business ownership. That would be kind of one piece of advice I might have. I think recognizing that there is some risk. I am kind of in a similar boat where I have this vision for our second location that I don't see any other models of. I'm like, this is something that no one else is really doing. And on one hand, that's amazing because I think it means that I'm sort of in a unique space. But also when there's no models, it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this and I don't know if it's gonna work and it's a lot of money and so there's some risk. I think you gotta leap carefully and leap with sort of informed risk, but at a certain point you do need to leap
And then
and
I just
trust.
Just
Yeah.
a quick follow-up. I know Ace is in Cincinnati. He mentioned that before. I'm in Cleveland, and I can't remember where you said you're located, Kate. But how do you stop those to piggyback on your idea and kind of mimic what you're doing and be a competitor of you? How do you? That's another fear of mine. There's a lot of piggybacking going on in Northeast Ohio that somebody sees an idea and 20 other people want to do the same idea. Uh,
Yes.
how do you differentiate yourself from those
That's
that
such
want
a
to piggyback on your idea? And I'll shut up because
yes.
I think I talk too much, so I apologize.
No problem. Well, I'm in groceries, so I mean, look, it is it is cutthroat out there. Grocery is notoriously low margin, highly competitive. We are in the same city. We're headquartered in the same city. We're in Cincinnati. Kroger is here. I mean, Kroger is the largest grocer in the entire world. I mean, they have a market share of like billions and billions of dollars. We actually, I always share this story because I think it's just fascinating. We had a team from Kroger do like a team building activity. I should say their name personally, but there's no evidence of this. They did like a team building activity with us one time, and then I saw some of our products in Kroger, and I thought, hey, are they scoping little us? Like, so I know a thing or two about just being in a really competitive industry and just feeling like you're always on your tail, like something's always on your tail trying to copy your model. or try to take on sort of what your ideas. I have also seen a lot of businesses come and go, and times where I thought, this is it. This is it for us. They're putting in a Trader Joe's down the street and we're screwed. There's just no way we'll survive. We do our own thing. We stay true to our vision and we thrive because of that. I like this. I use this quote. I don't even know if it's a quote, but the poet Wendell Berry has something to the effect of "tend your farm." And I often sometimes try to think too big. I think like, oh my gosh, Kroger carries this product for, or some big grocery store carries this product for, 30% cheaper than ours, and how can I ever stay afloat? And I tend my farm. I kind of try to come back to where I am, come back to sort of like what I can control and what it is that we're doing, and I remind myself, hey, like, we have a curated experience. We've got something that no one else has. If you're putting your own individual stamp on it, nobody can compete with you. Because it's you, it's no one else is and you matter, your ideas and your vision matter, and no one can compete with that because it's your personal story.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, I love that. I had a few things to add. So, now, so I think, especially because what you're in, and you may be aware, is what's referred to as like the ideation phase, of your business is what it sounds like. So you have an idea, and now you're formulating an idea. And the best thing to do during that phase, like you were saying, a lot of people are like, oh, I need to get me an accountant and I need to open up a bank account. I need to register my business and do all of these things. When in reality, in this phase, you need to look for as many free and low cost resources to help you develop that idea as possible. So of course we have ECDI, the Women's Business Center, up in Cleveland. You have a SCORE office, SCORE, SCORE, which they do small business assistance. You have the small business development centers up that way as well. You likely have some form of Chamber of Commerce, as well as chambers that, like the Arab American Chamber of Commerce, they have those in a lot of cities, in different places like that. So finding those resources that not only are free for small businesses, but also are specific to not just your industry, but also who you are as an individual. Because then you'll get to meet people who understand where you're coming from, especially like that, immigrant, entrepreneurial family background that you have. It can help you navigate those spaces as well. Another thing I would add about that fear of kind of like replication, it's unavoidable, kind of like Kate pointed to. It's going to happen. There's a saying where there's innovators, imitators, and idiots, right? So you have the innovators who are kind of like the forerunners, kind of sounds like what Kate's project is coming up. There's kind of nothing like it out there. From those innovators, there are always going to be imitators who see that and then want to do it. And then on the latter end, you have the idiots who come after the market's kind of been absorbed, and there's not really many more people out there to replicate this particular type of service or product, and they don't make any money. The main thing is that you want to make sure you're not in that idiot group. Right. So imitating a model is okay. Innovating a model is okay. But all of those come with their own individual challenges. And that goes back to getting those, free and inexpensive resources as you ideate your kind of project to really understand, okay, where am I falling inside of this particular space? Is there a market for it where I am? And there's a difference between, and Kate also pointed at this, I'm giving you kind of some technical terms to call Kate's points. It's really what I'm doing. And this is the other thing within the business world is that you'll get into these spaces, even with these free resources, and they'll use, technical jargon that, you may not be familiar with or maybe industry specific. So that's another part of that kind of education piece is knowing how to decipher that technical jargon. But another part is you have your target market, which is broad, and then you have your accessible market. And typically when you can get to that accessible market, which is the group of that target market that you can actually reach, once you can get to that accessible market, then you start to get those brand loyal customers for your business. And that's kind of what Kate hinted at as these new competitors, kind of show up and these new, products kind of replicate what you're doing. As you tend to your farm, the people who choose to do business with you will continue to choose to do business with you because they're not just looking for a product or a service, they're looking for that full experience. Again, depending on, and then there are business models that just, compete based on, price and quantity, where it's easily substitutable. So those are just a few things like as you go on this small business journey that you'll start to really look at. And it's important in that ideation phase to understand those things. And we can help that here. ECDI, it's called the Women's Business Center, but we help all types of businesses. And as our director here, who has her hand up, I'll let her talk next. And she has a question for you as well, Kate. Always says, look at the local small business resources, as a buffet. Pick and choose which ones you want to use multiple of them. Oftentimes we're not competing with each other, within our markets, we're all trying to help small businesses. So, don't feel like because you're using some resources at SCORE, you can also go to the Chamber of Commerce or you can go to ECDI or wherever else you want to use those resources at as well. Okay. Well, thank you,
Great,
Nasser. We
Thank
definitely
you.
appreciate that. Yes, sir. And then I'm going to give Ella the floor. So, all right. All right, Miss Ella, you can go ahead with your question. If I can hear correctly, in the office next door. Sounds like she might hop on the phone. So we'll move forward. I think she had to take a call. But does anybody else have any questions for Kate? Post them in the chat, post them in the Q&A portion. And let me see. I did have a few questions from out. Well, while we're on the topic of kind of immigrant, first generation businesses, where as you were kind of taking over your dad's businesses, were there any business practices that he kind of carried with him from Lebanon that may not have applied to like our kind of local kind of like way that we do business here that you had some challenges with, or even maybe applied well to kind of like your customer base?
Yeah. I think because it's the Women's Business Center, I would be remiss to at least mention the challenges of being a woman in this space. It was not always well received. There were vendors that I had to sort of like have my dad make a formal introduction to because I would try to call them and wouldn't get calls back, or they would just ask to speak to my husband or whatever it was. So I think there was a little bit of a level of sort of a bro culture, maybe, that I had to kind of like steel myself toward. Um, and that just is, I think, partially cultural, partially just the nature of, being young and taking over for my dad when they were used to dealing with him. That was sort of a thing. And let's see. Well, kind of like I said, things were not very systematized. So my dad was sort of the perfect example of somebody who sort of like have the idea, do the thing. Like the time between his ideas and his sort of action was pretty short. Whereas I'm a thinker and I like to put it in my spreadsheet and marinate for a while and really I like it all sort of organized. That was sort of a hard, I think, transition. Um, yeah. Um, the other funny thing is I remember when he was kind of coming out of his chemo treatments and we were sort of starting to talk about transferring the business officially. And I said, Dad, what about your succession plan? Like, did you have a succession plan? And he just sort of looked at me like, what? I don't know, not really. There was, I had like Googled how to transfer a family business, and it said things like, make sure that it's documented and that you've met with an estate lawyer and that you and I mean, none of this was on the table. And so I think I had tried in the beginning to say like, well, why don't I start to document this and really document a plan for this takeover? And it just wasn't his style and it
Mm.
never really landed. And I was sort of beating my head against the wall. So finally I said, okay, let's take a step back. Maybe we can do this in a kind of compromised way. Um, and so it was just a slower process and it was very much in person and not necessarily like something that we could, have all written down in a nice, neat binder, which is sort of what I imagined would be. Uh, so I think like meeting each other where we are was part of what made it work. He was very willing to meet me where I was as well, and so eventually that's what worked.
Well, all righty. I think Ellen had to drop on a call. She has her question.
I'm
Oh, there she
thinking you
is.
may have already answered the question. I had to step out for a moment. Thank you for sharing your entrepreneurship journey with us and what you went through. How valuable would you say your relationship with your father's bankers and lenders applied to your situation? Because you weren't really a part of the business in the beginning. Well, you weren't part of the business in the last year or so. You lived away, now you're back. And then how receptive were they of that, you coming in, and how important do you think of a role that played?
That is a great question. And we had so my dad actually had a bookkeeper that he really, really liked, who retired the year I took over.
Mm.
Oh,
So, which was so hard because he was with a firm, like a larger firm. And so I went to somebody else within the firm, but they had a relationship, like, and that relationship of like he was able to explain the income statements and explain certain things. This new person, I mean, there was just no relationship there. So even though it was the
mhm,
same firm, it was kind of like, I don't know what to tell you.
mhm,
That was really hard. And I think that if we had some time, if I had some time with his bookkeeper, and it was more than a bookkeeper. Like it was a whole firm. They did taxes, they did estates, they did all sorts of things. Um, if I had some more time with him, I think that actually would have been crucial. We have stayed with our same bank for years, and we do have relationships with our bankers right now that I've maintained, and I think that's been very helpful. There's a lot of turnover there as well, but at the end of the day, they know we've been a customer for a really long time, and I feel like I have an ear there. Um, and so they're always willing to answer my questions and kind of work with me. And again, it's like sort of like we deal with our local branch and have somebody that I really, can trust that they're going to get back to me right away. That sort of thing. So it's crucial. If you can maintain any of those relationships, highly recommended, but just make sure that you're taking the time, like I said, to dig in for yourself and understand everything so that it's not just like you're saying like, I'll let the professional handle it. Make sure you know what's going on and what they're doing. Um,
mhm.
yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Right. Well, Kate, thank you. This was wonderful. It's a lot of great information. I think one of the big takeaways that I've got, especially as we look at like, say, like a first generation family business, is like all the things that Kate are saying that she had to learn are probably things as first generation family businesses you might want to start looking at implementing. Right. What's that succession plan? What's that exit strategy? um, as well. Am I going to have the business inherited? Am I going to have employees that can take it over? Or is selling the business part of that exit strategy? So, especially as some of us who are, in that first generation of starting a family business or working with family within our business, looking at some of those challenges that Kate had to kind of overcome as she, took over the family business. I think would also be at least a great takeaway for me as somebody who inadvertently has a family business. Well, it's typically how it happens. Most people don't go into it like, oh yeah, it's going to be a family business. It'll be great. Yes, thank you for that. But Kate, do you have anything, any new menu items that are available for shipping or people to come down to the shop, or anything you want to announce that's coming up for Kate or Dean's
Gosh,
Mediterranean?
yeah, I'll make a pitch for Finley Market because it's, especially if you're in Ohio and you're here. I know you'll have West Side Market, maybe up north, and it's a special place and it's just a great place to visit. So we've been in this public market for 40 years and there's a lot of small family businesses here. So I'm a big public market fan. So I'll make my pitch for Finley Market. Come see us. It's a neat place to visit. Cincinnati's got it's a neat town. And we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We've got a few things. So we actually have 4 small business resource fairs coming up this week, or this month rather, with ECDI. 3 of them happening this week. So we have the Small Business Resource Fair for the Southwest Ohio market happening right here in Cincinnati at the Alloy Development Center. Or Development Corporation, excuse me, located in Norwood. That'll be this Thursday from 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can join us there. And then we'll also have a presentation from the Department of Labor, specifically talking about how to secure your small business for retirement. So that was one of the points that Kate touched on. And it's also something that's critically important. And that's coming from the Department of Labor, which is a service through the government, and they offer those resources for free, right? Because your tax dollars already paid for it. So definitely come through if you want to see that training. And then we have a bunch of other trainings as well happening. We have another small business resource fair also happening on Thursday. That one starts at 3 p.m. up in the Toledo area. So if you're in the Toledo area, be sure to register for that. And then we have our small business resource fair happening in Cleveland. It's actually a small business block party happening in Cleveland, Ohio. And that one is going to be this Saturday from 11 to 2 p.m. Then lastly, we're having our small business resource fair in Columbus happening at the Columbus Metropolitan Library on May 18th. So we'll have links to all of those if you want to register for those resource fairs coming up. They'll have a number of our resource partners throughout the city, some of which we talked about with Kate today. So if you're looking to start your small business or looking for some of those free and affordable resources, please come to our resource fairs and resource block parties, because they'll all be there with information on how to get connected and how they can help you grow your small business. Thank you for joining us this week on Tuesday Tune Up, presented by the Women's Business Centers of Ohio. Thank you, Kate, for volunteering. And we look forward to keep us up to date on your new project. Not only what we love to help, but I love to come. I love sitting at a big table with new people and learning new things. So thank you again for having us and presenting your expertise today.
Yes, thank you
All
all.
right.
I'm more than happy to answer any more questions. If anybody wants to email me, I think Isa, you said that you'd share my email. Really more than happy to kind of share what I know. And I'm curious about your all's business too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll send out that follow-up email and also have a recording of this training. I'm going to keep this window open for a little bit longer in case anybody wants to grab anything from the chat. But we enjoyed your all's presence today, and we will see you in the next one. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.